All right. So let's start with a little bit of circling and noticing the feet. So of course, when you circle your hips, you stimulate the edges of your feet, the heel, side, the ball, the foot. So it's a double benefit. And sometimes you actually have to think of the foot and just think, oh yeah, I have feet. And when I do the circling, I'm stimulating the points all along the bottom of the foot in a different way than when I'm just standing or I'm walking, because I'm considering the outside edges. And then circling the other way. And often we don't think about the feet until they become a problem. So bringing our attention to different parts of the body as we warm up is a good way to just kind of do a moving body scan and to bring energy, thought, leading the chi through the thought of that part of the body and attending to places that you might not be attending to. The number one thing that people say, the number one phrase that people say during a massage session is, I had no idea that was that sore, or I had no idea that that was that tight. I had no idea I was holding so much there. So there are areas that we just don't inhabit, and our practice is about inhabiting places that we might not ordinarily in our average, whatever our mental state is in getting things done. Okay, so circling the shoulders. And most of us do have some tightness up around the shoulders and the neck. And a little, you might notice some popping and cracking, and you can notice if one side, that popping and cracking is more. Sometimes it's an inflamed muscle or tendon. Okay, and then circle the other way. So it's not just about doing these exercises that we know how to do and checking out, like thinking about, what do I have to do today or whatever, but actually to use the motion to bring your mind and body together and just to attend to, much like the way you would attend to a pet or a child. You need to attend, you need to pay attention to. And then just letting those move in a way that feels, like you're getting your own adjustment. And then resettling the shoulders. And then up to the upper dantian, the head, the ear towards the shoulder, and then relaxing and being always very careful with the neck. A known motion does allow your body to unwind because it's a predictable motion and it's more likely that you'll relax into it. Letting the SCM, the front side of the neck, if you lift your chin, you're going to get a little more stretch without crunching on the vertebrae in the back. Lift the chin and relax. Okay, so I'm going to step out into double shoulder width so that I can do, side movement and forward and back movement through my hips. So now I'm adding a little bit of a load to my hips themselves, and I'm going to put them through a range of motion, sliding and gliding the hip joint. And, if something's going on, in your body, in your back, in your hips, in your SI joint, generally doing these horse stance movements through your hips, it shows it right away. So I had something happen, over the weekend. I could feel it when I do this. So I want to, you want to be careful if there is anything happening, that you're just really moving slowly and letting everything warm up and paying attention. So it's really that, the inside, that's the hip that's down, the inside of that hip, around that hip joint, that's getting a stretch. And then a little bit, of course, the outside, which is more common, if you're a side sleeper, the outside of your hip gets stretched. But oftentimes, unless you do adductor stretching or this exercise, that inside, the deep inside of your hip often doesn't get a stretch. Okay, so I'm going to come back and let my tailbone go back and bring my tailbone under and back and under. And noticing what this feels like. Of course, one direction is often easier than the other, whether you tend to be anteriorly or posteriorly tilted in your pelvis. So you can kind of notice that. The direction of ease is the direction that your pelvis likes to sit, and the direction of, try is going to be the direction that you need to move in and open into to find balance. And then I'm going to go across the diagonal. So these across the diagonal movements, we move across diagonals all the time. You move from one foot to the other. You cross pattern. Generally, most people naturally cross pattern. That means your opposite foot and hand move forward in space. So that's kind of a diagonal pattern. So we're being very clear about a diagonal pattern, going out through my SI joint area and back through and opening up the hip crease. Across the diagonal. So again, we don't spend a half an hour on these exercises, but you could. You could spend a half an hour just doing these exercises to get your hips more limber. It's a safe way to do it, rather than just plunging right into very large stretches or very large movements without, a good warm up. So if you have something's going on, you want to stay within a safe container of movement and move, slowly and for many minutes to get change. So of course you can be doing something else. You can listen to, well, I always say don't listen to the news, but listen to music or something like that, and just go through these, try to relax into it, spend some time with it, go across the other diagonal, and just stay aware. So that means don't check out of your body. Stay aware of what's going on, because part of the healing is having your mind be aware of what's going on and monitoring, oh, that kind of hurts, or that feels a little bit better, or whatever it is that's going on. Injuries teach you a lot about mindfulness, because if you're not mindful, you really can hurt yourself. Cross that diagonal is very little bit different for the hip socket itself. Like I might be stretching that back corner of my hip socket, and then the front corner of my hip socket. And then all the muscles that come in all these different directions towards your hip. Some of them are tighter, some of them are not online. They're not, they're kind of not working for you. So this gives you the opportunity to connect with that. And then I could go back into circling the hips and just see if that feels better, So of course, the more time, sitting is warming, and that warmth is going to go up through your hips, and the slow motion is engaging your mind and body into what's happening with you, and then things start to release. So I circle the other way. So you're really having a conversation with the felt sense of this body that carries you around. Most of the time, you're not really thinking about what your body has to do to get you through the day. Do the dishes, go take a shower, go to work, drive in your car. You're not thinking about what your body has to do to be able to do those tasks, unless you're injured. Then you really think about it. But we want to enter the container of having this conversation with the body. We use this time to do that. Otherwise, injuries mount without our being aware of what it is that we're doing to bring about that injury. Okay, so hopefully that just feels better. Always, like, you start here. We start with the circling of the hips and the standing, which this is not as extreme an angle for my hip joints. So I can think more about the other areas of my body. Once you step out, you're putting a greater angle on your hip joint. So you're asking for a deeper stretch of the hip joint. More of those ligaments have to release to allow you to do the circle in a bigger frame. And, if you're pretty flexible and you really need more feedback, you can slide out a little bit more and do those same circles. You may find that the wider you go in your frame, the less movement you actually have in your hips, because you're limited by stretching sensations. But you can do it and get a little bit more stretching happening, because you're already in a stretched position before you start circling. Okay, I can't say enough about just spending the time in the hips, because it has such a deep effect on the knees, on the ankles, on the feet, on the vertebrae going up, the shoulders, the neck. So the more time you spend doing this kind of stuff, and I see a lot of you, when we're outside at class, that's what you're doing. You're moving your hips around. You've already kind of built in the program that you're going to start there, and start your noticing from the center and let it go up through the other areas of your body. Okay, so a little bit more warmed up, which of course, the looser I am in the center, the more connected I am from heaven to earth, the more the head and the feet are connected to each other. So we're going to do a little bit of upper body Qigong. So just letting your arms swing a little bit. And again, if you don't have a lot of time, some days it's cold and you want to move fast because it's cold. But if you want to load up your muscles and ask a little bit more of them, slower is more strengthening. Okay, so we're only going to do 2 movements on each side, but we're going to do them slowly so that you get a chance to notice that, what's going on with your shoulders, and, feeling the tissue load through the whole thing. Okay, so I'm just loosening up my shoulders. Now I'm going to let them be still, and I'm anchoring, relaxing my low back and lifting my crown so my core is more lengthened before I begin. And then I just rise up. So I'm sending the hands out, and then a little more lift through the spine, just so that you're in harmony, your inside body and your outside body together. When you press the hands forward like this, you're putting a load on the tendons, on the, the carpal tunnel, and all the way down the underside of the arms. You want to feel that load. And then rise up, just feeling yourself lift your heart to your crown, and let your hands, one hand at a time. I started moving into a different Qigong, sorry about that. One hand up and one hand down. So when you're up and down, you can press your palm up and press your palm down. And then make sure your tailbone is reaching into the earth, or your long and your low back, before you push back. Once you push back, you want that energy to go through the muscles between your shoulder blades, the rhomboids, the traps, the lats. So you can add a little bit more by pushing up and then pushing back. And then go slowly as you come back. So you feel the work that has to happen and resisting just dropping your arm, which is a lot easier. Okay, and then letting one hand drop and then lifting the heart to the crown, getting long in your body, and then pushing from down with the lower palm, up with the upper palm, getting as long as you can from your feet to your crown, and making sure your low back is long, your tailbone is anchored, and then push back a little bit. So you're getting a little more engagement between the shoulder blades, really feeling the back strengthen. So of course we're losing a lot, all the computer stuff, all the hands forward stuff. We're losing a lot of tone in the back. So adding that little bit extra at the end will really help to get the tone back to your back and release the tightness in the front. So I can start by just letting a drop happen. And then from your center up to your crown, lifting your spine longer so that assists the inside energy, assists the outside energy. And a lengthened torso will help you have more range of motion in your shoulder that's going up. When you're up and down, keep the tailbone down, push the palm down, push the upper palm up, long from your feet to your crown, and then add pushing back, tailbone down, so that you get the energy right behind your heart area, which opens the front. Okay, so we're going to add something that I've been talking to you guys. We're going to do this exercise one more time. And that is, if you just take your hands, you're just going to lower them so you can do this with your hands. Okay, so we're talking about knitting the ribs. And knitting the ribs is not letting your rib cage flare, because if you let your rib cage flare, you're going to do this with your back, right? So when I'm saying lengthen through your low back and drop your tailbone down, it's also not letting your ribs flare. So a lot of us have computer, etc., have taken this area and actually sunk in it, right? That's the other direction that we don't want to go, taking the heart and sinking it. I want to keep the tailbone down, lift the crown point up, but feel an energetic connection from one side of your ribs to the other. So you have muscles that come in across and knit your abdomen together to the central, the linea alba. There's muscles that come across, and there's muscles that go, vertically, and then there's muscles that go diagonally. But we want to feel like we have a container that's bringing us through to the conception vessel on the front, and holding that container. The stronger we are, you guys know from doing any kind of PT, if you've had a back problem, they strengthen your core to keep the weight off your back. So now the additional thing when your arm goes up is not only to just drop your tailbone and let your low back get long, but to make sure you're not pushing your heart out too much, because then your heart is actually also strained. It's supposed to hang in a sack and float in that sack. So part of what will keep you in the container is just feel that you have this horizontal connection across your abdomen to the center line to keep this core channel connected. Okay, so I'm going to do this from the side now. So my hands are going to come up. And I'm letting my palms press forward, feeling the tendons on the underside of my arm stretching. And then one side up, one side down. I want to be long in my low back, connected through my tailbone, but knit through my ribs in the front. Not too open through the heart, not to shut down in the heart. So if I feel this sense of containment here, through the false ribs especially, I'm holding my rib cage in a way that's more natural, not sticking my heart out, which makes my tailbone go out, not sinking my heart in to get the back to, like making that back artificially open. Look what happens to my shoulder. The middle way, let the low back be long, but keep some containment at the ribs so that you can reach up through the crown, but not pushing out. So when I say lift from the heart to the crown, I mean through the core, not by pushing your heart out, which is going to make your tail go, make you hollow here. Feel that hollow, draw in at the ribs and your whole area of that back, especially if you tend to really get tight through the kidney area. This really helps you to soften that. And that you're more of a tube going straight up and down so the energy can travel heaven to earth, which is a heaven to earth. This is pressing heaven and earth. Okay, and then at the end, I'm making sure I'm anchored. So if I push back a little bit, you get a little bit more of the muscles, multi-directional muscles between my shoulder blades to work, which then reciprocally will let my chest release. I just want to make sure I don't push my heart forward and my tailbone back. Okay, that's not the move at all. It's up and down, tailbone down, chin in, and then you feel the muscles between your shoulder blades activated. And then you relax. You slowly come back. Don't let that upper arm just drop. Just slowly come back. Okay, so one more on the other side, feeling the tailbone drop, the low back long, but the false ribs knit together so that the chamber of your heart, the thorax, is more centered. So I'm dropping one hand, I'm lifting the other hand. And when I get to the top here, I push the palm towards the ceiling, the palm towards the floor, staying long in my low back, but also knitting my ribs together. So I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this. I'm staying in the middle. And then, the range of motion of your shoulder is what it is. So you just work with that. But if you're pushing up and you're pushing down, you can then, if you can't really feel, if pushing your hands back doesn't really work for you, think of just drawing your shoulder blades a little together. And that might get the same effect, but keep pushing through your hands. And then slowly return. So that was, 3 times on each side. But the attention and intention that we had to keep the core channel correct is a completely different workout than if you're just like, oh yeah, we're doing these arm things again. You're doing yourself a disservice. You're not connecting the inside to the outside. You're not training your core, and you're usually putting your shoulder at some kind of, you're decompensating, there, instead of using your core properly and letting your shoulder have a better chance at being in the proper position. Okay, so now we're going to do the side. So we're going to come up, turn the palms, and here what's important is to keep your hips to the front and turn towards the back as well as you can. So what I learned from Alex, we did these for a long time, the last workshop, is that the more your hips can stay forward, the more you're going to feel the work in the back of the shoulder. And we are trying to, most of us, release issues in the front of the shoulder. And the more you can strengthen the back of the shoulder, the more the front will release. And I slowly come back. Okay, so I'm going to keep my hips forward. My spine can twist. But keeping my hips forward, it may limit how far I go back. I was kind of really allowing my arms to go front to back, but letting my hip go. So if you really square your hips, it puts more load on the back of the shoulder. So you keep that work in the back of the shoulder. All the time you spend activating the back of the shoulder is equal time you spend opening up this overly tight front of your shoulder. So that's the benefit of going slow, is not just, the tissue load, the strengthening, but also the nervous system, letting the nervous system start to get it. Keeping the hips forward, moving slowly around to the back. Try to keep the hips forward. As you push your hand back, feel the work on the back of the shoulder. Letting your nervous system sort of get this. Oh, you want me to work? Oh, you want me to let go here? That takes time. And it's plenty of work to carry your own arms in space slow, which is kind of what I love about it. It's your own gym workout without the gym. Slowly turning, keeping your hips forward. Your head can turn to the side. The hips stay forward. And when you get to your full range of motion, hopefully you're feeling the work in the back of the shoulder and the stretch in the front of the shoulder. And you're giving yourself a little bit of time. You can even push out through your palms here to feel the work in the back of the shoulder, which reciprocally releases the front. Let's slowly come back. We're going to do one last piece of this series, is really the first half of this Qigong. I bend my elbows. And again, I keep my tailbone drawn down. I keep my ribs knit together so I don't flare my chest and my low back. I do the best I can to lift up through the crown and lift my elbows up. Now, this is just me. It's not part of Alex's Qigong. I mean, if you get your hands together or your fingertips together in the back, I like to just wake up the extensors of my neck by resting my forearms, the back of my head, and using that as a place to let my head push back and open up the back of my neck, and use the extensors. Because a lot of us are bent forward and the front of the neck is really tight and the back loses its strength. So I open up my elbows. He doesn't do that pushback. You just move through the range of motion. I just want to be clear about that. When I'm teaching you something and I add something, that I've added something. Okay, so now we'll move through the range of motion the way that Alex does this, which is keep the palms forward. You bend the elbows, the palms are going to the ceiling. You push the elbow a little bit forward and then keep yourself really rooted as the crown lengthens up, the elbows follow that energy. And then your hands can come together in the back, or your fingertips, whatever it is that you can manage. Then roll your elbows out to the sides. I think of pushing back with my elbows as well. So I get that activation between my shoulder blades, then drop down and open the elbow. And this exercise improves so many things. Range of motion of the shoulder, flexibility and strength to the tricep. Drop the tail up through the crown. Lift the elbow. Open to the sides. Push a little bit back. Feel the muscles between your shoulders. And then open. And stretch the palm. So if you've had carpal tunnel, this is kind of like a nerve glide in every direction. So bend. Push the elbow forward. Drop the tail, lift the crown. Open to the sides. Stretching the chest using the back. Stretching the carpal tunnel. And coming forward. And then slowly drop down. So a lot of people think they have carpal tunnel. They get sensations in their hands, and actually it's the tightness of the scalenes. side of the neck into the chest is compressing the nerves at the thoracic outlet, and you get feedback into your hands. And sometimes it is carpal tunnel. Sometimes it's both, but keeping the back strong so I can release the front of my body is a way to get a lot of that, nerve compression to release. You want to release the front and use the back. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do one other prep, and that is just going to be to open my back. So I'm going to do brush knee, and then I'm just going to reach. Don't change your legs, change your back. So you just did brush knee, and from here, just let yourself reach forward, not by bending your knee, but by stretching your back and reaching across the diagonal of it. Okay, and then push off your front foot, lift your crown. The hand will just go up. You don't have to do anything with it. It's going to go up because your crown went up. And then the other hand is going to come up to a level, and then turn and bend. Push off the foot, lift the crown, turn and bend. Push off the foot, lift the crown, turn and bend. Push off the foot, lift the crown. It's mostly a hip fold. And if you get your mind into thinking of hip folds, you'll stop thinking forward and back. It's more moving through the arch from the foot up to the other hip, down the leg to the foot, from the foot up, lift the crown, fold the other hip down the leg to the foot. If you start thinking like that, you're less likely to hurt your knees because you're using up as much as anything. Okay, so I'm going to just finish right there because I want to explain that a little better. Okay, so just coming back. When I do brush knee, say I just did this big opening and just really open up my upper body and my back. When I do brush knee, I want to think of I'm going up the back leg, down the front leg. I'm not going on horizontal tracks front and back. See what my knees are doing? There's too much knee and not enough hip. So I do brush knee up the leg, down the other leg. What's happening is I'm doing what Tai Chi says to do. Don't rely on one direction. I'm including the vertical in my horizontal. And you combine that vertical and horizontal, you get more of a rounded movement. Open the joints of the back, sit on the joints of the front, open the joints of the front, sit on the joints of the back, rather than this, right? So we say in the beginning, to beginners in Tai Chi, that the head stays pretty level. And that's true in that I'm not doing this and that. So they'll tend to go straight and down and straight and down. And that is making my head go up and down. So that's too much vertical and not enough horizontal. But most of us know that, okay, we're thinking about the choreography, and the choreography goes that way across the plane. And then we lose the verticality we need to find in each and every move. So if I open up through this leg and this hip, and I fold through the front leg, to the outside observer, I'm still relatively the same height as I was. But to my inside body, I feel the verticality within the horizontal exchange from foot to foot. Okay, so if you got, knees bothering you, you want to think, open the joints that I'm moving off of, and then fold the joints of where I'm going and open the joints. Think vertically, because the horizontal is already built into the program, because you got that foot there and you got that foot there, and you're moving your locus of weight distribution from one to the other, that's going to move you horizontally anyway. So you might want to start just thinking of opening the joints and then folding the joints so that you're getting that vertical within your horizontal. And your joints are built to move this way. They're not built to move like this. It's too closed, right? I want to open the joint and then bend the joint and open the joint and bend the joint. Okay, so one of the beauties of doing this particular exercise is it opens up your spine more, but it also teaches you that you can get from foot to foot quite generously without doing a lot of horizontal movement. So just starting with brush knee, and don't go forward with your knee. Instead, go forward with your back, drop your tailbone and stretch through your back and reach across the diagonal. And then push off your foot. You're starting to open the joints of the front leg, lift the crown. In the middle, your hands become horizontal to one another, same level. And then you fold the back joints, open your low back, bend your back and stretch your back. And because I'm doing so much with the upper, I'm not so invested in that horizontal shift. I'm just folding the joints and bending through the back, and then opening through the joints and opening the back, and folding the joints and bending the back, and opening the joints and opening the back. Folding the joints, bending the back. So I want to keep my tailbone rooted enough that I really feel like I can stretch from the tip of my tailbone through my hand, through my fingertips, and then push up. Open the front joints, open the back. Fold the back joints, round the back. Open the back joints, open the back, etc. So you see how much range and dimension you can get with not a whole lot of horizontal thinking. It's a good one to get, your whole body going. And you just prepared your arms to be able to hold this position because you just did those arm Qigongs. So they can hold themselves up, and they won't hold themselves up if you don't build that in, the ability to hold your arm up from your core. You'll struggle with it, and tired arms and lifted shoulders will mangle your form. Push out, round. Keep pushed out. And then there's a little elbow bend, round the back, round the elbow. Open. See here, my arms are pretty open. They're not straight, but they're pretty open. And then I sink the tailbone, I fold the hip, I round the back, and I round the elbow. And then I open the joints and I open the back, and the elbows are more open. And then I fold the joints and I round the back and I round the elbow. Okay, so studying in this way is really what changes your form. The reason Alex created these Qigongs is that he really saw the need for elemental change. You can do the form over and over and over again, and that's good practice. But unless you really start to take the pieces apart and improve each part of yourself, you'll plateau in your form. So you want to find a way to break up some of those habit patterns, to open up the body more deeply, so that your form starts to feel different because of the practices that you're doing to prepare for your form. Okay,